we're going to go ahead and get started on watercolor experimentation. Make sure that this part of your watercolor palette is cleaned off, so if someone else left a mess, make sure you wash it out in the sink. The first thing we're going to try is the flat wash. So I have two different color brushes, two different sizes. One is flat, one has a point. You can use either one. But what I'm going to do for the flat wash is I'm going to put some water in this tray, just clean water. And today I'm going to try to use some greens and blues. So I'm going to put enough water in here, paint in the water, to make a nice color of green. And then I'm going to use this paint and create a flat wash. So I'm trying to make this all look the same value. There's not a lot of darks and lights. It just looks like one solid flat color of green. You can use whatever color you want. If you wanted to try blue, purple, whatever. Sometimes with watercolor, you have to work a little fast because it dries pretty quickly. So I'm trying not to put a ton of build up puddles. I'm trying to spread it out and make it look all the same value. Kind of a flat wash. Okay, there you go. And now I'm going to clean my brush. And we're going to try a gradient wash. So gradient, think of gradual. A gradual fade from values of dark to light. So since I have green, I'm going to go ahead and use green. I'm going to start with a little more paint, a darker paint. So I'm adding some green. I might have to add a little more paint and a little more water to get the darker value that I like. Okay, so here's a dark value of green. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put some clean water. I'm just cleaned my brush and I'm adding water really instead of paint. And so this is just thinning out the paint and gradually fading it to a light value. So I'm doing that with water. So it starts dark and then it fades to light. Okay? You can experiment with that. You can use any colors. You can use whatever you want. This one's called wet in wet. So you're going to just use clean water and you're just painting water onto your paper. Okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to have some color. I'm going to try some blue. Some water. Remember to put some water because watercolors need water. Add some blue here. And then you just put the paint on the water. I might need more paint. That doesn't look very dark. You can dot it, use brush strokes. You can clean your brush. What if we try some of this green on here too? See how it spreads? It looks pretty. I might make a little pile here of purple too. Because I like purple with blues. And I could add. So that's wet paper, wet watercolor. Now be careful with how much water you get on your paper because this paper is not the best quality for watercolor at all and it'll pretty much start bubbling up. So you can see I added maybe a little too much water, but that's okay. Okay, so this is color to color wash. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add a color at the top and a different color at the bottom. So it's kind of like a gradient wash, gradient from the top down and from the bottom up. So we're going to start here. Okay, if you feel like your watercolor is too light of a value, add more paint to the water. So we're going to do a gradual fade. Now I'm going to put clean water and kind of stretch it out here and make it lighter as I go down. Okay. Now it's light. And now I'm going to add a different color. I'm going to try the blue. We're going to start with the blue. Look at this, how it's kind of stretching into the water. I think that looks pretty. So we can fade those two together. One thing you can do if you ever, like, say you wanted this blue darker, you can always let it dry and come back and add more blue or whatever you wanted to do. Okay, salt. This is fun. So I'm going to go ahead and use this green since I have a lot of it. I'm going to try this. Instead of painting with brush strokes like this, try to avoid that this time. Let's just pile up. It's kind of like we're dotting it. If your paint is getting too watery, add more paint to your water. Just kind of, I'm going to try to avoid those brush lines. I like it to look more drippy. Okay. And once you have your color, let's add some blue on the other side. And I know blue and green work well together. And then what you're going to do is, I have some salt right here. You don't want a ton of salt. You just want to sprinkle it on, maybe just a pinch. And you're going to sprinkle it on the wet paint and let it dry. And what it does is it soaks out the color and makes this pretty little speckled color. All right, let's do this one. This one we're going to use alcohol. So I'm going to just use my brush and do some washes here on this. I really wish I had a little bit of a bigger brush. We are ordering some, y'all, so just hang in there with these smaller brushes for a little bit. But you have to kind of work quickly with watercolor. You don't want it to dry too much while you're working on an area. Okay, so I just used purple. Use whatever color or a few colors. This is the alcohol, and with a Q-tip, I don't know where my Q-tip is. Let me find it. Well, here it is, sorry. With your Q-tip, you're gonna dip your Q-tip in your paint, in the alcohol, and then you can just dot it. And you see how it takes away the color and spreads the color out? I think you could even draw with it. Yeah. If you don't have enough paint in your watercolor, it doesn't show up as good. But that can create some really fun effects too with the alcohol. Okay, this one we're going to do, it's called lifting paint. So we're going to actually use a paper towel, and we are going to, let's just do a blue. Let's pretend this is a sky, even though skies do not always have to be blue. But I'm going to just use blue for this one. So I'm trying to fill the space with blue. If you need more paint, you feel like it's too watery looking and light, add more paint to your water, okay? There's some blue. And then when you got to work kind of fast because you don't want it to dry before we do this next technique. You're going to get a napkin and you're lifting paint off. So you could see how that could really make some cool sky or clouds or something like that, right? Just lifting the paint off. Okay, that's with a napkin. Last one, use crayons. What's fun, if you use a white crayon, you can't see it on the white paper. You draw something, you could draw anything. I'm just gonna do some swirls and lines and things. Okay? All right. Here's the white. And then with wet watercolor, I'll use purple. The wax from the crayon resists and it creates this interesting look. You can use different colors. It resists the watercolor. Let's try some yellow. I haven't used it. We'll make a little pile over here. Okay. All right. Then what you'll do is you will eventually put this on the drying rack. Oh, one thing I wanted to show you guys too with a straw. Let's say you had, let's use black because it'll look kind of neat. I'm going to put water in the black. I'm going to put a dot of black here. You can use any color. And a straw. And you can make these interesting trees or just beautiful lines. Pile of that could be interesting with a like a silhouette after this background dried to make it look like trees or something. That's always fun to try with the straw. Okay, that's another thing that's fun. And oh, okay, let's say this is pretty dry here. So try this also. Dry your brush off a little bit with the napkins. I mean, dry it off almost completely. And then with your brush, dip it in some paint and just kind of spread it and drop it on there like a splat. Don't get it on your neighbor. Okay, that's kind of a fun technique too. Anyway, now what you need to do is clean your brush well. And one thing I wanted to show you guys, when you clean your brush, don't ever like press down and mess it up. You're kind of mopping it like this back and forth in your water, okay? And you're gonna need to take this to the sink, just this part, rinse it off in the water, and then dry it off and close it up so the next person will have a nice clean palette, okay? All right, and your work goes on the drying rack. Make sure you put your name on it because these will look a lot like Miss Bruce. Y'all have fun.